everybody. Welcome to A Moment of Clarity. Thanks for joining me. Please take a minute to share this and let folks know. Today, I have a wonderful guest, Sivan Tal, who is the father of someone refusing to enter the IDF, the Israelis' so-called defense force, just like we here in America have a defense department, all of which are focused on offense, on attacking others, on continuing our empire. Of course, so defense force is a euphemism, as our military and the Israeli military love to use. So to get into this, I thought I'd show you a news story that will help introduce our guest. This is about the International Criminal Court from the New York Times. You can't get any better propaganda than the New York Times. This from the ICC will now investigate accusations of war crimes in Israeli-occupied territory. Israel's actions in the Gaza war in 2014 will be one focus of the inquiry. The decision to investigate infuriated Israel and was welcomed by the Palestinian leadership. Even though that title does not have much propaganda in it, you can still see the hints of propaganda. For one thing, you notice it infuriated Israel, as in all of Israel, all of the people, everyone in Israel was infuriated, but it pleased the Palestinian leadership, which we have carefully been led to believe is just pure evil. So it basically pleased these evil people, if you're going by American propaganda, and it infuriated a whole country, every one of them. Not a single Israeli was happy to see the ICC look into Israeli war crimes. But anyway, that little word usage propaganda aside, this is yet another update, yet another move in people becoming aware about the war crimes that are done in Israel's name, that are done by Israel's defense force, quote unquote. And something else you need to know before getting into this interview is that the Israeli military quote unquote service, there's so many euphemisms. It's like every other word is like a euphemism. You're in service of the IDF, but I'm doing my best to use the euphemisms because that's the way people normally talk, but also explain them. But anyway, it is mandatory to be in the Israeli army, the Israeli military, for, I believe, 2 years. And that is why the refusal of the Tal family is so important. And I'll let him explain it more because I think that'd be better. So please welcome Sivan Tal. Hello.
Hi, Lee.
It just occurred to me, I'm probably pronouncing your first name wrong. How do you pronounce it?
Sivan Tal.
Oh, okay. I was
the
close.
best I ever had an American pronouncing my name was you. I don't know how I got that so right.
All right.
Anyway.
So yes, thank you so much for joining me, especially with such a large time difference, 7 hours. You're in Israel, and I think so. I want to get into your children and their refusal, but I think first you should explain to people, because I think a lot of Americans don't know about the mandatory service in Israel, quote unquote service.
Yeah, it's mandatory. It's a conscription. I think conscription as a humanitarian matter should be abolished because no one should be forced to carry a gun and kill other people in the name of a war between nations. People shouldn't kill, not deliberately, not in their own will, and not in the will of someone telling them to kill others. So I think conscription should be abolished. It's wrong. Only people who are willing to do that should do that, and nobody should be forced to join an army. And that's right, international, that's global. But I think in the Israeli reality, when it comes to the IDF, and you mentioned the accusation of the ICC investigation, this is even much worse because basically you're facing a dilemma between violating Israeli law or becoming a war criminal and violate international law and any universal principle of humanity. So, yeah, and you mentioned the ICC investigation, which I welcome, though I think we both kind of get the feeling where it will end. I mean, they're also trying to investigate the US for war crimes in Afghanistan, and basically it's kind of a mouse chasing a cat, and the mouse might get killed eventually. But I welcome it mostly for the raising awareness to the atrocities going on in Palestine. And I want to mention that these allegations about war crimes being committed since 2014 in the West Bank and Gaza are just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, and we don't need the ICC to investigate because we already know. And also one point about the framing of it is the ICC is going to investigate into whether war crimes have been committed in Palestine, not who's responsible for that. I mean, the evidence is there. It's all there. All the footage, everything is known. War crimes have been committed, and the investigation should have been who was in charge, who gave the orders, who approved it, who made the decision. Whether it actually happened or not.
And these war crimes are ongoing. I mean, you can watch video right now of the Great March of Return, where IDF is just shooting, children, old women, medics, and these are all unarmed people approaching the fence. But anyway, we can get more into that.
You like making analogies. So suppose that in post-World War II, someone suggests opening an international investigation into whether Nazi Germany has committed crime against humanity in World War II. Basically, you would say, what's there to investigate, right? You see the camps, you see the ghettos, you see the dead people. You just need to investigate who's responsible, who's liable, and put them on trial. Same here, you see the ghettos, you see the killing, you see the atrocity, you have all the evidence, and that's what should be investigated. How it happens, who makes it happen, and who's responsible for the ongoing onslaught, for the ongoing atrocities in Palestine.
So I want to explain to everyone the situation with your son, initially your daughter, and where that stands. So your daughter was a conscientious objector initially because she's the older one, and then now your son is up for military age, and he's doing the same. Is that correct?
Yeah, and we're taking a stance here because we see what happens around us. We see all the indoctrination, the education system. Israel schools are basically preparation for the IDF, and the number of acquaintances that they get in the highest grades in the last couple of years in school, in high school, before age of 18, they meet so many officers and so many happy soldiers and so many people actually educating them about how fun it is and how important it is and how great it is to serve your country and defend your country. That it's kind of leaving no choice. And when parents are actually proud of their kids going there, it makes it a whole lot worse. And we think that it's important that parents also say a word, because these are kids, they've been indoctrinated. That's unfair. They're not shown the true reality. And if I have a minute, I can just skim through it, because Israel was founded in an ethnic cleansing operation that Israel is called the Independence War, the Liberation War, and the Palestinians call it the Nakba. Nakba is catastrophe in Arabic. And after doing those horrible deeds, they established the state, and Israel wasn't initially accepted as a member in the United Nations. The United Nations wanted Israel to honor their resolutions, and Israel didn't. So in order to get accepted as a member of the UN, Israel committed to honor those resolutions. One of them was 194, a resolution which basically says that Israel should allow all the Palestinian refugees to return to their homes in peace and live in peace. The other was all the sections in the Palestine partition plan from 1947. Israel actually honored only one section, which is the establishment of the Jewish state, but violated all the other sections. And in order to get accepted to the United Nations, Israel actually agreed and committed to honoring all the UN resolution, including the Palestinian refugees. And then it got accepted, and it never honored any UN resolution since then, including those two. And you know what happens if you steal a lot of money and you get away with it, then you're likely to steal more and more money, and eventually you have so much money that nobody can stop you from stealing even more. So you get you can feel the connection between capitalism, colonialism, and the settler colonial enterprise, which I happen to be part of and a citizen of this state. I love my country. I love the people. I'm not opposed to. I don't hate any Jews, and I'm Jewish. But I oppose to this racist ideology of Zionism, and I want to make Israel better, not stronger. I think it's strong enough. I think maybe the problem is it's too strong.
Just slightly. Watching children with rocks go up against tanks, it doesn't seem like there's much of a chance there, or that they feel actually threatened, which they always claim, which is hilarious. But so I just want everyone to understand, like, what happens when someone resists joining the military. And I'm wondering what happened to your daughter and what you think will happen to your son for refusing military service. It's a mandatory 2 years, right?
Actually, it was 3 years for boys and 2 years for girls, and now it's 2.5 years for boys. I think 2 years and 8 months. And when you refuse, and my daughter, when she refused, she basically made it public. She posted about it. She went public. She went open with it. Rather than just sneak through some excuse, which is also fine. I mean, whatever you choose, however you choose to do it, I support anyone who refuses to serve, and anyone finding any way to avoid, becoming a war criminal or participating in any way in what the IDF is doing. But once you do it publicly, you get a lot of fire. You get a lot of heat from all circles, from your family, friends, colleagues, neighborhoods. Suddenly the neighbors start, looking the other way, or, not smiling at you and saying good morning, because you're kind of becoming like, not one of us. And for us, I mean, I'm adult, I'm a strong man, my wife is a strong woman. We can handle it, and we have our circle of friends who who know who we are and appreciate us. I also have Zionist friends that accept my views and are like me as a person and respect me. But for the kids, I mean, for the youngsters who are enlisted and refuse, they are the ones who take it the hardest, because they kind of being cut off from their circle of friends, which is very important to them at that age. Suddenly, it's the social pressure is so high, not just to go to the army, but also do something important and be a warrior, not just a driver, and be a combat soldier and all that crap. So yeah.
And are they imprisoned, or what? Was your daughter imprisoned?
Yeah, my daughter spent like 60 days in prison. She faced a conscience committee, which is also a farce. That's a real joke. I mean, the army has the IDF. Um, um, it there's some international law that says that people should be exempt for conscience on some conditions. So they have this conscience committee, which consists of a group of IDF officers plus one fig leaf from the academy or something, some doctor from the university, and they get to decide if someone wants to get exempt on basis of conscience, like a conscientious objector. Then they decide whether he can be exempted. In order to get exempted, you have to convince them that like you're absolutely a pure pacifist who wouldn't hurt a fly, and not some some guy opposing the occupation or being political about it. So if you're political, they say that it's political to refuse to enlist, but I say, of course, it's political. Everything is political. Also, joining the army is political,
Right?
But it gets to the it gets to the absurd of being asked questions like, consider you're a guy with a knife chasing your mother, going to kill her, and you got a gun in your hand. Would you kill him to save your mom? If you say yes, you're not a pacifist and you can serve. If you say no, they won't believe you, right? So you have to say something in between.
That's incredible. And so, yeah, I mean, they're terrified that it'll spread, with someone like your daughter saying clearly why she's not joining and that she doesn't want to join. They're afraid that they'll end up with thousands of young people that will say they're no longer going to be part of a military service that involves war crimes. Do you have any idea how many, what percentage of young people refuse each year? Is it just a tiny percentage?
Yeah. So let's say the IDF does give some statistics, and it's about actually only about 50% are actually enlisted out of the Israeli citizenry, because there's the Arabs who are exempt. Orthodox girls or religious girls that declare that they have a religious way of living, which is another reason for exemption. All these Orthodox guys going to yeshivas and whatever get exempt. And there's also a lot of gray exemption, people getting out in all sorts of medical conditions, psychiatric conditions, whether they're real or a little bit exacerbated, whatever.
Like Donald Trump, who said he had bone spurs. You can do that type of thing.
Yeah. So, yeah. So, don't mention him because I'm gonna laugh. So you people who are actually go public about it and are conscientious objectors of the kind my daughter was, there are a handful each year.
Okay.
Yeah, and those guys, the IDF make them pay for it. People should know that they go to jail for a significant amount of time, so that people don't follow suit.
And I think over email you said that with your son, legally it may be something new, because legally you're claiming that your son doesn't want to join either, but legally you're saying that you and your wife are still his guardians despite him being technically of age, and therefore you should be able to keep your children out of the military. Is that correct?
I think that that's our duty as parents, to do all we can and pursue any legal support we can. I don't know if that will actually get us through court. Probably not. But at least we can, tell ourselves that we did whatever we could to help him get exempted. And actually, we want to stand between the authorities, between the IDF and our son. He's young. He's just 18. He's been indoctrinated. He's under, all the social pressure, all these circles. Everybody goes, everybody serves. It's not easy to be in that position, and we want to support him, and we want to take the heat, and we want to stand in front of him instead of, cheering as he jumps on the bus or on the truck on the way to the West Bank or whatever. We think parents should take a stand here. Parents should support their children, and young people age of 18 shouldn't be conscripted. If conscription age was like 24, how many people would actually go? I think much less. It's not a coincidence that the day you're out of school, you're in the army. It's insane.
Right. Real quick, I wanted, because you mentioned the term Zionist, and you're Jewish, and a lot of people like to conflate, basically anti-Zionism, so being against the idea of a Jewish state, with anti-Semitism, and they try and do that intentionally so that people can't be critics of Israel, can't be critics of Israel's foreign policy or the way their military behaves, because it's all called anti-Semitism. And I was wondering if you could just talk about that for a moment.
Yeah, I think, and that's just my opinion, I think that Israel is not only committing crimes against humanity, Israel is committing a crime against Judaism. because it uses Judaism as a pretext for all the atrocities and all the racism that's taking place in Israel. I mean, it's really, I mean, there's a debate in the Israeli left whether Israel is becoming an apartheid state or not. I think, well, it is an apartheid state, but in many ways it's much worse because, you know, non-Jews in Israel, I mean, the native Palestinian people, they're in a certain way, are in much worse position than their natives in South Africa were, or in the apartheid regime, or natives in other colonial enterprises, states that were established in the global South and in America, because in the end, nobody questions their nativeness. Nobody questions their right to live in their homeland. The Palestinians are in a unique position in which the state of Israel treats them as foreigners and as if they are the invaders and we are the natives. Well, you know, it's kind of it takes a very twisted mind to think about our immigration from Europe in the late 19th century and beginning of 20th century, and even to these days, as kind of a return home after 2,000 years of exile. I mean, these people are here for centuries. I mean, they're natives. They have a right to live here, and we want to throw them away. And we question, and we object to their right to live in their homeland. No native community was ever threatened in these days. I mean, we know what the Native Americans had gone through, and we know what happened in Australia, but that was centuries ago. We're talking about the 21st century and the 20th century.
Yeah.
We're talking about post-World War, and it's really amazing. So Zionism is not Judaism, and anti-Zionism is not anti-Semitism. And I think every Jewish person, like any other person, should support, equality for all, and oppose to the Jewish supremacy state of Israel as a Jewish supremacy state. I mean, I want to make Israel better. I don't want to be against Israel, but I'm against this ideology that says that all Jews should be in Israel. You know who says that all Jews should be in Israel? Most anti-Semites today say all Jews should go to Israel, and that's what Israel is saying. So,
right,
who's who?
Yeah, evangelicals believe that all the Jews need to go to Israel so the end times can come and the Jews can be burned in hell, which doesn't sound exciting for me. Not really on my agenda.
Yeah, but I'm less worried about those about us being burned in hell.
Yeah.
I'm more worried about what it means for Palestinians, because part of this is first having a war between the Jews and the Muslim world, right? And that war is what should concern us, not burning in hell afterwards, because this is about people's lives today. I mean, you go to Israel, go to Palestine, but Israel don't see it. They ignore it. They deny it, and that's horrible.
Last question here. What would you like to see? What are the next steps that you'd like to see in the coming years that you feel would really have an impact?
That's a good question, Lee. I don't know where to start and how.
No more mandatory military, sir.
Yeah, that's for starter. Yeah, I want an exempt. I want the conscription into the IDF to be abolished. I want people to understand that this is this must end, and this atrocity must end, and the Palestinian refugee problem should be solved, and not in the way that Israel tried to solve Palestinian refugee problem in Lebanon in 1988 by invading Lebanon and trying to exterminate all these refugees. We tried to clean this country. It didn't work out quite well. There's still Palestinians here in Israel. They still exist. They're still alive, and they deserve a better future, just like us. And I don't know what's the right path to there, and things look really, bleak. Looking forward. But maybe the ICC investigation into war crimes in Palestine and Israel, maybe that should make some effect. Maybe we'll do our best. I mean, there's a story about that guy who stood every night in front of the White House during Vietnam War with the sign "Stop the War," and the policeman said to him, "Well, you're standing here every night for so many months. Do you really think you're gonna change the world by standing here in the rain, in the night, holding this sign?" And the guy said, "Well, I'm not standing here in order to change the world. I'm staying here in order for the world not to change me." So at least Israel won't change me, even if I won't make it and make a big change in Israel. But even little change, I mean, keep it alive until more forces come and make a better world eventually.
Well, you and your children are important because you serve as an example and you inspire people to stand up against these powerful forces that are doing wrong and create so much death and destruction. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Tell them thank you from me as well.
Sure. Thank you.
Hope to talk soon.
Sure.
That was Sivan Tal. He is a citizen in Israel, lived there his whole life, I believe, and with his wife and their children. And both their children are conscientious objectors, refusing to join the IDF, the Israeli Defense Force. And I think that, this is just another kind of crack in the veneer of the idea that Israel wants you to believe, that the United States wants you to believe, that Israel can go on being like this forever, that it can just oppress and destroy Palestinian lives forever, and that will be fine, and just get used to it. But you're seeing more and more people wake up, not just within Israel, but around the world, to this situation. I think we're hearing the word apartheid a lot more. We're hearing a lot about BDS, boycott, divest, and sanction movement, the Great March of Return. These things are growing, which is causing, even here in the United States, causing them to have these ridiculous responses, such as in Georgia, where they, Abby Martin has a lawsuit. I talked to her about it on this show against Georgia for trying to get anyone who speaks or performs in Georgia to sign a pledge saying they will never support BDS. They will never support the boycott, divest, sanction movement. We're seeing it in the censorship of videos. I mean, I knew I couldn't put the word Israel in the title of this video, or they would probably ban it and, never let anyone see it. Who knows whether it'll get suppressed anyway, because they can obviously, voice to translate, voice to script translation. They know plenty of the words that are said in this video. So it likely still will get suppressed, but maybe not at the level as having Israel in the title. But yeah, we're just seeing it endlessly, and that type of suppression, that type of censorship, that type of holding down those of us who are speaking out against these injustices, and we got to keep doing it. We got to keep fighting back, as Sivan Tal said. We should not let them change us. At the end of the day, that should really be the goal. And by the way, I just wanted to wrap up here with another story that I mentioned yesterday, because you guys actually let me know about it while I was broadcasting, and then I went and saw I sure enough had a message from Steven Donziger talking about the fact that, let's see, I'll show it to you. The fact that he had a big win in his case against Chevron, or actually it was a big loss for Chevron. So this came out yesterday. Donziger wins. So most of you know, I had Steven Donziger on earlier this week, the lawyer that won an extraordinary victory against Chevron. This is another extraordinary victory in the New York Federal Appeals Court. In a major rebuke to Chevron and controversial U.S. trial judge Lewis Kaplan, that's the corrupt judge who has had Donziger under house arrest for over a year and a half. In a major rebuke, a New York appeals court today threw out a key contempt finding against human rights attorney Steven Donziger that had been used to fine him millions of dollars in court costs and led to criminal contempt charges that resulted in an unprecedented 19-month house arrest without trial. This is an extraordinary legal victory that should lead to the enforcement of the environmental judgment against Chevron and the dismissal of the criminal contempt case against Donziger. This is also a victory for indigenous peoples throughout the world against oil industry polluters. So this is a big win for him, but it actually is not over. He's not, as far as I can tell, he's not allowed out of house arrest yet. There's other aspects of Chevron's attack on him. So it's not over. I would keep following Steven Donziger, keep following what he's doing. But, you know, Donziger and Sivan Tal's family and who else do I have on this week? Lillian House in Denver, Aurora, Denver, and Matt Johnson, who was on Redacted VIP. All of these people this week ended up being a theme. All of these people are facing charges for standing up for what's right, for standing up against injustice, for standing up against the corporate state, the military state, for standing up against these things. They are all facing charges. Donziger's under house arrest. Lillian House is facing years in prison under felony charges. Matt Johnson facing charges for revealing what goes on in factory farms. They've started a new practice called the euphemism for that one is ventilation shutoff, where they have thousands of pigs inside a barn. They close all the doors and start pumping in superheated air and just allow the pigs to basically bake to death overnight. And it literally takes them hours and hours to eventually die, thousands at a time. I mean, it is a true horrific scenario, and that's what he helped reveal. And so now he's facing charges from the FBI for revealing the truth. All of these people are, I don't know about you, but they're an inspiration to me. They're an inspiration to a lot of people for standing up for what's right, for not allowing the threats, the pressure from governments, from the FBI, from corporate corrupt judges like Stephen Kaplan, from Lewis Kaplan, from these all of these incredibly powerful entities that are trying to continue their hegemony, their control over our lives, over our culture. And these people, their tenacity, their courage, their bravery, it's contagious. I mean, we need some good contagious. We're in the middle of a pandemic. We need some good contagious. So it's fucking contagious, and people stand up alongside them, and they see them fighting, and they see them not cowering and not giving in and not caving, and it really is contagious. And so, you know, having all these people on in 1 week, which I hadn't exactly planned, has been really, really awesome for me, really exciting. And I hope you guys have enjoyed these interviews and seen what these people, you know, what amazing people are doing around this country, and including obviously Israel, around the world. You know, don't think you're alone in trying to change this shit show, trying to stop these oppressive forces. You out there are not alone. We're working on this together, and you know, just very impressive people. Thank you all so much, and please share this. Please check out these videos. I do these every single day, except sometimes, and they're at leecamp.com. So if you're not alerted about them, please go check out leecamp.com and keep fighting.